for the folks watching, can you kind of introduce yourself? And then the first question is, the Ada County Sheriff has retired, and now there's this vacancy that you're going to fill. Ada County's the biggest county in the state population-wise, and that's a big role. And so, what kind of drove you to say, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for running to be nominated for the Ada County Sheriff?
Well, precisely because of the population explosion, we have elements coming to this county that are challenging our quality of life. I came here in 1993 for the first time and saw Ada County, and it was so beautiful to see no graffiti on fences and how really kind of naive people were, but in a beautiful way. And I thought, wow, I want to move here. So I did, and I defended the quality of life here for 24 years of my 32-year law enforcement career. And now with this population explosion, I see elements coming in that really concern me. And this isn't the first time that I would be responding to something like that. I started the gang unit for Ada County. It was my proposal that, to the credit of Sheriff Killeen at the time, he signed on for. It was very effective. We worked well with other agencies to defend our quality of life back then from that element and other proactive strategies. I talked to the juvenile judges at the time, Judges Hay and Vale, and had them add, as a condition of probation to juvenile gang members on probation, a Fourth Amendment waiver which allowed police to stop and search on contact on site these gang members. So it was a tool for accountability. And so those kind of progressive strategies and ideas I've employed before. I'm a forward thinker and a problem solver. So why I'm putting myself out to fill this vacancy is because I see more of the same coming with this population explosion. I see elements coming in, and the whole country sliding to the left, and Ada County seems to be sliding to the left too in terms of the attitude towards law enforcement. Now, I believe that police need to be police, of course. They need to be oath-centered and held accountable and operate in the guardrails of policy, the Constitution, have integrity-centered leadership. But at the same time, police, deputy sheriffs should not be paralyzed like they are in so many other areas of the country by being more afraid of their administration than they are of the criminal. If we're going to be proactive, and we have to be proactive if we're going to save our quality of life, deputies and police officers need to have a sheriff that has their back. And that they know that yes, they'll be held accountable, but when they use of force, the optics of use of force is never pretty. There's no pretty way to put someone in cuffs who does not want to be in cuffs. But if the deputy is operating righteously and within the law and within policy, even if it looks ugly, I will have their back. Our quality of life must be defended, and it's not going to be defended by armed report takers. It's going to be defended by a proactive culture that is seeking out these criminals. In terms of BLM, they have a First Amendment right, which I defend, but when a protest turns to a riot, they'll be held accountable. And you're seeing in other parts of the country this slide to the left where mayors tell chiefs to give these rioters, they call them protesters, rioters more room, and that's unacceptable. And I don't want that to happen here. So I believe I have the skill sets and the ability to build relationships with other agencies, to work in concert to defend our quality of life in this county. And that's really what's motivating me to run. This is my home. It's been my home for 27 years, and it's not the first time I've stepped up in a creative way, in a proactive, forward-thinking way, to address a problem. And that was the gang problem initially, earlier in my career with the sheriff's office. And now I'm semi-retired, and this was unexpected, this vacancy, and I felt just compelled to step in and offer what I know I have and defend our quality of life and change the narrative, or push back on the narrative that is paralyzing so many officers throughout the country, even in this state. And so that's what I offer. That's why I'm throwing my hat in the ring.
Okay. And you kind of touched on some of this. The second question we had was, we talked about law enforcement use of force and kind of the law enforcement interaction with various communities, because that is a hot topic, obviously, and has been since last year in the death of George Floyd, the use of force and defunding the police and interacting with law enforcement and the citizens. So how do you think that Ada County is currently doing? Is there things that you think that you could help do better as if you were the sheriff, or do you think everything is going okay right now and you're going to step in and continue what has already happened?
I looked at the use of force policy that is available on the sheriff's website, and that use of force policy I would change. I would make it very clear that the officers can use the LVNR, which is the lateral vascular neck restraint. The media calls it the chokehold. It's not a chokehold because it doesn't restrict airway, it restricts blood flow. It's the optics of using the LVNR doesn't look good, but it ends a fight fast. And if it ends a fight fast, it's going to save potentially the officer's life and or the suspect's life. So while optics look bad, that's a tool that a lot of agencies have taken away, and I want to make it clear that deputies in Ada County have it and can use it. It wasn't expressly clear when I read that, so it leads me to think we need to tune that up and look at some other aspects of the use of force policy. That is critically important. We want our officers to be safe. Obviously, we want them to be measured in the use of force they use. Verbal skills are very important, and respect for the deputy is important. The public trust is very fragile. If people lose the public trust, they're less likely to obey a reasonable, necessary command to stop, right, to freeze, while an officer's trying to detain somebody to investigate something, when that respect is lost. So it's a real delicate balance, guarding the public trust and being proactive. And so with my background as use of force instructor and a former gang officer and an investigator for the prosecutor's office, a detective for the sheriff's office, before all that I was an officer down in San Diego County, I was in the gang unit down there. That background, I think, uniquely suits me to be an effective sheriff, an effective leader, someone who will communicate with the public and help mitigate some of the emotion in some of these controversial use of force situations that get in media. I mean, maybe it didn't happen here, but it's a topic here and it inspires some sort of protests here, and that's fine because I support their First Amendment right. And if it is wrong, certainly the police need to be policed, right? But why not be more visible as a sheriff and more engaged in the conversation and educate the public on the whys and why nots of use of force? It's not often fair to talk about an actual event that hasn't been fully investigated yet, but we could talk about a like event, just for the purpose of educating the public, and the sheriffs and sheriff's deputies and police officers hearing a voice of the sheriff articulate, it helps them do their job better, because ignorance is just a lack of knowledge, and most people haven't been in a situation where they had to make an arrest and it turns to use of force, and now you're rolling around on the ground and. Any fight an officer is in is a fight. There's a gun involved, the one he's carrying, and there might be more than one gun involved. Maybe the suspect's carrying it. So, to be effective in controlling behavior, the movement of people that are detained, and measured force is important. And be able to articulate again the whys and why nots to the public is essential to guarding that public trust and confronting crime.
Okay.
We don't want armed report takers, and we have to be proactive. We don't want to be AAA with a gun. And I'm not talking about over-policing. I'm not talking about a police state. I'm talking about being proactive in directed patrol where it's needed, where our crime mapping and data tell us our problems. So that's what we need. We don't want to slide to Portland or slide to Seattle. So it's going to take effective leadership, messaging to the deputies, and communication to the public, the whys and why nots of law enforcement and use of force.
Okay. And then the last question is, we are in a more heavy Republican state. Obviously, there is currently a Democrat president, and so there's some citizens, and one of the questions, this is coming from our readers, is how do you see your role as a sheriff in I guess if there is a conflict, so to speak, not necessarily armed conflict, but just a conflict of ideas or whatever between what we have here in Idaho and maybe what the federal government is doing. With
the federal government, if the federal government was overreaching the constitutional guardrails, well, it would have been my responsibility to interpose. Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my oath is to the Constitution. And so you have to confront that. You have to confront overreach. For example, one question I'm frequently asked is gun confiscations. Would I allow ATF to come in and seize guns? No. Even if Congress passed a law, I would have to disobey that law, because in disobeying it, I'm actually honoring a higher law, which is the oath to the Constitution. So if it puts me in a position to decide between honoring my oath or enforcing something on its face is clearly unconstitutional, I have no choice. I must obey my oath. And that's what oath-centered leadership is. When I took my oath, it wasn't just a photo op with the scrapbook. And this isn't something, I haven't just recreated myself or invented myself for this moment in time. If you study me and my writings and my history, I've always been oriented this way. And so that is important, because we are in a transformational period of time in this history. And you're talking about the Democrat president and ideological differences and divisions in our culture and population. That's all very real. But I'll tell you something. as strong a proponent I am of proactive law enforcement, I am a stronger advocate of Constitution and civil rights. Owning a gun is a civil right. Okay, First Amendment is a civil right. So even BLM, I reject their premise, but I will defend their right to the freedom of speech and right to assemble. And so that's all constitutional centered and driven. And so would it be in your question about overreach. I have to defend the people's rights from federal overreach, and I have to defend people's rights to speak out who I disagree with. You know, the war on police coming from that element. Well, they're Americans, and they have a right to speak, even if I disagree with them. So law enforcement should be objective. The Constitution and our rights should be objective, should be nonpartisan, really. The Constitution says what it says and means what it means. And I take an oath to that Constitution. I don't take an oath to a judge or to the governor or to the president. I take an oath to the Constitution.
Okay, awesome. Well, in closing, if you want, is there anything else you want to say to the public and to the precinct committeemen who weren't able to make it today, and I guess your campaign pitch, if you will,
well,
to them?
So. Thank you. Just that this is obviously this population explosion is bringing about such challenges to our quality of life, and I do believe I'm the right person with the right tools in the toolbox, with the history at the sheriff's office, familiar with the operations of the sheriff, still have people in the sheriff's office that I know that I can reacquaint myself with. I have a history there. I just think I'm uniquely suited, due to my background, to address these changes and challenges that are coming at us so fast. The quality of life must be defended, and it must be defended with someone who knows how to be proactive, someone who is forward-thinking, someone who has a history of making policies and practices that are effective. So I just ask you to vet me and vet all of us and make the best decision for our future, because our future is now. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Appreciate